Episode 68. Why is my husband wasting his time? Welcome to the First Year Married podcast, where we get real about building the marriage of your dreams. I'm marriage coach Kayla Levin, and I take newly married and engaged women from anxious and insecure to confident and connected through practical tips, real-life inspiration, and more than a little self-awareness along the way. Hello, ladies. You know, it's so bizarre to me. A couple weeks ago, when I did the first coronavirus episode, I was like, oh, we'll do one about Corona before life comes back to normal. So here we are now. This will be the third week where we're talking about this. I've been hearing from you through email and through Instagram, and for sure my clients and people in the First Year Married grad community. This is a lot to be dealing with right now. So I want to just let you know that I'm here for you as much as I can be. Any of you who missed the announcement, we are, as long as people are on lockdown, we have decided to pretty much waive the fee for First Year Married Online, the online course. And we've got an amazing, inspiring group of women who have decided to use this time to work on their marriages and to stay super positive and focused. And I'm just totally stoked to be working with all of you. So you can check that out by going to firstyearmarried.com/course. The minimum payment is $20, which is basically just a processing fee. And we're just hoping that we can get as much helpful information into the hands of whoever needs it, because we know there's a lot of additional stress right now. We felt like this is the piece that we know we are, Noach and I realize we are very fortunate to be in a situation where that's something that we can offer. And I'm grateful for the people who have signed up. So one thing that's been coming up a lot specifically, I'm sure we're going to have lots of different things to address, but one that really was coming up a lot was frustration and judgment over how your husband is spending this time during lockdown. Yeah. You know, that could look like you're seeing your husband on his phone or the computer for just like hours on end, or he's just vegging out in front of the television. I get it. It's really frustrating, right? Like you see him and you're like, but we could be doing, I need you for something, or we could be doing something productive. And it's almost like if he wasn't even there, it would be easier, but just he's there and he's doing that thing and it's very distracting, right? Like it takes up this huge amount of mental space. So the first thing I want to say is just, I get it. I totally get where you're coming from. But of course, that's not helpful. I don't want you to think that you're weird, but I also want to give you something to actually move past that. Otherwise, what good is this podcast? So I have the three main points that I want you to think about that I've used for myself, that I've suggested for my clients, and that I think, especially in light of what we're all going through right now, could be the most helpful things in terms of this particular issue. Look, and this could be coming up now during coronavirus, or it could be you're married to a healthcare worker, and this is not at all when you're seeing that and you're seeing at some other point. It's a pretty common phenomenon. So let's tackle it today. Okay, so number one, I'll start with a story. So those of you who know about the 5 love languages, I think it's a fabulous system. I do have one podcast episode about how sometimes it gets used in a way that's not so helpful, but the 5 love languages are a concept designed by Gary Chapman, where he talks about how we all have a certain language in which we express love. We might have more than one, but we have primary language where we express love, and that's how we hear love. So a person who's really into giving gifts, you'll see that they really appreciate gifts, but somebody else might be into words of affirmation or acts of service, right? So when we were newly married, my thing is acts of service. I really like to be productive and to get things done. That doesn't mean that I don't also have a side of me that can be super lazy and procrastinate, but I enjoy getting things done. I found myself when we were first married with my acts of service wanting to delegate my husband's hands along with mine, right? Like we'd be getting ready for something, guests coming over, or we had to clean the apartment or something. And even though it was, I hadn't communicated with him, like, here's what I would like us to be doing. Like we weren't in on this together. This was just completely my idea of what I thought should happen. And I hadn't even asked for him to participate in any way. So I would just sort of start to see as like, okay, well, I have 2 hours and there's these jobs. And if I do this job and he does that job, right? I'm just like delegating. Like now that we're married, I have 4 hands that can do all sorts of different things. Well, it happens that my husband's love language is physical touch. So As I'm stressing out more and more, he's wanting to calm me down and make me feel better. So he comes over and he holds my hands. And I'm thinking like, no, I don't have any hands. This is terrible. I had 4 and now I have none. Okay, so that's just a ridiculous story. But to illustrate the point that we get into this mentality of like, he's available to us, right? Like he can be delegated to, right? And it's very natural and it's very normal and it's very worth stopping and laughing at yourself and reminding yourself he is just as much an individual as he was before you got married. He is no more your lackey than your boss is or your coworker is, right? Just like you wouldn't walk into your work and tell your coworker to help you clean your desk. I don't know. It doesn't make any sense to be doing that with your husband. It just doesn't make any sense. So really the easiest approach here is really just to catch yourself and to laugh at it. So if you see that you're annoyed with him because he could be doing something, but then you realize that the thing you want him doing is like your thing. So then you could go back and listen to the episode about getting regular help from your husband. I'm going to explain why him helping around the house can be a gift to you and how that's actually better if it's a gift to you than something that you make him do for fair play, which is what a lot of us want to do naturally. And I really, really dive into it on that episode. So if you haven't heard that one, you got to go back and listen to it. Okay. Number 2 is, this is a big one. Okay. Just because you're going through the same experience doesn't mean you're experiencing it the same. Okay, so you might both be in lockdown. You might both be working from home. Okay, whatever is going on, you're both experiencing coronavirus right now. But it doesn't mean that the way that you're processing it or the amount of stress or anxiety is the same, right? Like he might be more concerned about your physical safety and keeping everyone healthy, and you might be more concerned about what's going to happen on our mortgage payment, right? You could be experiencing totally different things, or maybe you're feeling like it's so great to take a break from the schedule and he's really, really needing that schedule, and that's really hard for him, right? So we just have to keep coming back and reminding ourselves to be empathetic and to not make assumptions. I'm fine. Why is he on the couch? Well, he's on the couch because he's a different person and he's having a totally different experience than you are right now. We want to get into a place of curiosity. Okay, so what's going on for him? Can I help him? Does he need me? Or is this working for him? Maybe this is fine. Maybe him being on the couch is the best possible scenario, right? It isn't necessarily a problem. The interesting thing about this whole lockdown is that even though for many of us this doesn't require a lot of physical energy, which is obviously not the case if you're a healthcare worker, in which case we love you, we thank you, and you are literally a modern day superhero. So thank you so much for what you're doing. But for those of us who are in lockdown, it can be really draining. And I think that's coming as a huge surprise to a lot of people because the schedule is off, the regular schedule is off, and there's like a little bit less running around to do. And we're doing a lot more. I mean, if you're in your apartment or your house, there isn't literally enough space to be getting as much movement as you normally do. And this reminded me of how when I was expecting our first child, I was put on bed rest. And the most shocking thing to me about the whole experience was how exhausting it was. Like I took like 3 naps a day, and not because I had nothing better to do, because I was so physically drained. I was like literally not allowed off the couch. This is a lot more freedom than that, but it's a good point for me to remind myself that these kinds of things can be very, very, whether it's emotionally draining or physically draining, it can get draining, it can be tiring. So you know what? It could be that what he's doing right now is he's vegging because he's worn out. Yeah. Maybe he should go to bed earlier, right? Or maybe he should go for a walk if he's allowed to do that wherever you live, right? Maybe this isn't the most helpful way for him to process his stress or anxiety, but you know what? That's okay because we get that, because sometimes we should go for a walk, but we don't. We go on Instagram or we reach for the chocolate, right? We get that. That's being human. That's totally normal. So we can see him on the couch and be like, oh, he's probably not even the best thing for him, but that's totally fine. He's being very normal. He's just like me. I also sometimes don't do the right thing for me, right? Like I don't take the best care of myself. And again, remember that it could be that this is exactly what he needs. This is fine. And I feel like this kind of leads into level number 3, which is that it seems to me, and nobody made me an expert on this, but you all chose to listen to this podcast, so I guess I get to say, but it seems to me that on a very meta level, we are being forced into an entirely different energy. And one of the things that I've been geeking out over the last 12 years has been the different shifts in the feminist movement, right? So just on a very, very brief, minor level, earliest feminists were trying to show that they could be just like men. What they wanted to do is to have all the jobs that men had. In certain armies, they wanted to have like the same jobs that the men had, but physically they were like just breaking more often in certain jobs, right? And it became this whole issue. What it created was this idea that whatever the men were doing was inherently better, right? And we haven't totally gotten out of that in the West. You do see kind of that second wave feminist movement. And if you get really into it, there's like 5 waves or something. But, that later feminism of like, it's also, we have this whole mother side, and that's really cool. And we have all these other things that we can do in this. You see that a lot of women are managers. We have very high levels of emotional and verbal communication. Those parts of our brains are larger. Appreciating what women bring to the table that is unique and special. That came later, right? The first thing was like, we can do what you can do. So I really feel like in the West, we're still kind of stuck on that like very masculine, very external accomplishment, very like all those things you associate with like testosterone, right? Like scoring points, accomplishing, winning, all of that stuff. And of course we have testosterone too. Of course women's brains can do all of those things. But right now, all we have is the relationships and the communication. Like a lot of those external scores, a lot of those external successes are really being stripped away. And we're kind of just all being forced to come into ourselves, to be reflective, to slow down. I saw this video of a movie actor at home. I think it was like on Instagram sending out a message. And it was just so amazing. Like the glamour was just gone, right? There was no hair and makeup. There was no, I don't know, costume, like clothing, wardrobe, whatever. It was just this person and their cell phone. And it really hit home of how this is just taking away all those externals, right? All of those levels of like hierarchy and all of that stuff is coming away. I think it's a really amazing opportunity for us, specifically in our marriages and with ourselves, to start to realize how much of that Western masculine accomplishment is what gives you value mentality has seeped in, how much of that we've accepted without even questioning it, and starting to wonder if maybe we're wrong about some of that. Like maybe there's some value to us regardless of what we're doing. And maybe the value has nothing to do with how much we get checked off on our list. Or what if it's not right or wrong, and this is just an opportunity to see that that is a value, an arbitrary value, that is outside of us that we can either opt in or opt out. So what does it mean just to be? And so like, what if it's totally fine that he's on his couch, right? Like what if that is an opportunity for you to get reflective? Because one thing that I've been seeing a lot with my clients lately is that when the judgments are coming up, like a lot of external judgments, they're reflective of a lot of internal judgments. We can't be judgmental about other people without being judgmental about ourselves, and vice versa. When we're really hard on ourselves, we get really hard on other people too, right? When we see ourselves judging our husbands, it's a great opportunity to kind of get reflective and to realize like, what is it? Like if I'm upset that he's watching TV, that means I've somehow made it like I'm not allowed to. That's not okay, right? And what if I just sit down and watch with him for a minute? Or what if I just go over and like appreciate that he found something he enjoys? What if I just make this a non-issue? Okay. So I just want to give you a quick overview of what we talked about today. Number one, he's not an extension of us, nor are his hands or his energy or his time. Number two, he is experiencing something very different than you, even if it looks the same. The external facts on the ground are the same. His experience is different. So you just want to get empathetic and compassionate and curious about that. And number three is that it's totally okay just to be. This whole needing to accomplish and to do, it's just a value, and it's a value that you can choose in or out, and you can choose in one day and out the next day. Like I would love for some of you to just decide that for a day you're just going to ditch the to-do list and just see what happens. And then the next day, go to town on the to-do list. Do the same thing with your phone, by the way. Okay? And it's okay to just be, even that if that means he's on his phone, whatever he's doing, it's not actually a problem. Use that as an opportunity to get curious about yourself, about your brain, about what you're making okay and not okay. And I hope this has been really helpful for you guys. I wanted to give this a full podcast episode because I felt like this deserved more than just like a one-liner response or a little Instagram story, since that's where most of these questions were popping up. Those of you who have taken First Year Married or have just signed up for First Year Married, we're going to be doing an unchallenge in there, right? We're going to sort of lean into this stripping away energy, this getting into ourselves energy, this kind of dropping all these points and checklists and accomplishment energy, and just kind of see what's going on underneath all that. And I think it's going to be really fun and really healing and just pretty awesome. So I'm excited to work with you guys on that. Those of you who haven't signed up yet, you still can, firstyearmarried.com/course. And I look forward to seeing you guys in there. Otherwise, I will see you back here next week on the podcast. Have an amazing, healthy, safe week, all of you. And I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.